Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Billy, and I'm one of the sponsor coordinators for the Red Team Village. I'm here with Jason Haddix from Flare, and today we're going to talk about the red teaming in general, but we're also going to talk about some of the services that Flare provides. This year, Flare is our exclusive diamond sponsor for Defcon, and we're really excited to be speaking with Jason and spreading awareness about Flare within the community. Before we dive into the interview, I'd like to just start out with an introduction. So, Jason, over to you to introduce yourself, and then we'll move into the questions.
Absolutely. So, hey everybody, my name is Jason Haddix. I am the field CISO for Flare, meaning I basically handle a lot of customer and marketing and content kind of stuff for them, and also talk a lot about the product and how it can help red teamers specifically because I have been a red teamer in my day job, and so I've sat in the seat of a lot of people who visit the Red Team Village and people who run the Red Team Village, and I still do red teaming to this day. So the Flare CISO job for me is a part-time gig, and then I do red teaming as part of my own consultancy during the day. So I really know what it takes to run a modern red team methodology, and the reason I fell upon Flare was because I was a customer of theirs when I was designing my red team methodology. And so I was looking all over the place for a tool that could get me coverage of this part of the red team methodology. And eventually I baked off a whole bunch and then ran into Flare and just thought that they were the best out of kind of the market. And so ended up working with them, and then it fell kind of right into this field CISO gig, and it was a match made in heaven, really. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. So we'll get started with some questions here, and you kind of piqued my interest a little bit because I'm not that familiar with Flare myself. So I'm excited to learn about it, from you, and then also I'm sure the community wants to hear as well. So just kind of starting out, how is red teaming impacting Flare, or based on your introduction, really, kind of how does Flare impact red teaming?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things I realized when I was building my kind of red team methodology at the previous gig I was at, and then for my current stuff, was that, like credential exposure, meaning that, credentials that are being sold on the dark web were a big source of breach of initial access for breaches, basically, right? So, whereas a lot of people want to think of the initial access being the method that disclosed the credential, whether it was phishing or whether it was drive-by malware or something like that. You're not going to have that in your repertoire all the time in a red team assessment. A lot of times phishing is in the red team assessment, but drive-by malware, casting a wide net at a whole bunch of people, hoping to hit their personal computers and then hoping they work for the organization you're trying to break into as part of the red team assessment, not something you really have. But you do have access to the dark web, right? And so you can go to the dark web and you can look at things like, Russian market and, underground forums and stuff like that. And so what I wanted to make sure to provide, my customers was this view of the underground and, where their credentials were being sold, and then also try to use those credentials on the red team assessment, because I knew from doing research as, like a former bad guy in a previous life, that that's the first stop for most bad guys, right? Is to check the underground ecosystem, and there were several layers of the underground ecosystem that bad guys will check before they even attempt to really launch a technical attack against an organization they're trying to break into. And so, when I looked around, what I was looking for was, these kind of threat intelligence, credential exposure type platforms that basically had really, really great coverage of the dark web ecosystems, the markets, the telegrams, the Discord channels, kind of all the places where these things get sold. And that's when I fell into Flare, was basically coverage of all that kind of stuff. And so when I looked at, credential exposure and tried to bake it into my methodology, I made this mental model for myself about, like, the easiest to get creds would be something you could find in like a dehashed. And a lot of red teams these days will use like a dehashed or, have I been pwned type service or something like that to eventually, find some credentials and try to stuff them into, SSO somewhere or some portals and see if that works. And that's really like the lowest level of this that you can do. But the higher level threat intelligence vendors and credential exposure vendors, they really play in the markets of the stealer logs, where bad guys sell credentials that they've gotten from various sources, usually like malware like Redline or something like that, and they will sell them on Discord, Telegram, or some very private functions of the forums online, dark web forums. And so nobody really had the access to those that I wanted except for Flare. And so I would start to go do these red team assessments and just look through Flare's dashboard for, a company I was working against, and I'd find, a set of maybe 50 credentials, and like, 20% of them would be that really in-depth kind of sale that was happening on Telegram of Stealer log data. And that data also included not only the credentials that I was looking for to try to log into corporate portals, but also the cookies so I could bypass two-factor authentication. And so I would use the Stealer log data and then test to see if it works, and I would include that as part of my red team assessment to break into the client.
Yeah, as a red teamer myself, obviously that sounds super useful. It's something that I kind of wish I had access to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Yeah. So moving into the next question, then, what's the future for Flare? Kind of what's their vision, and how does Flare see leadership in changing kind of the landscape of red teaming?
Yeah, I mean, so Flare is actually one of the only like CTI and credential exposure platforms that I know of that really does cater to red teams specifically, right? So I know a lot of I knew a lot of them, from doing the Bake Off, and don't want to BS anyone, right? Like, I mean, Flare had the best data, but obviously they were also willing to work with a consultancy that was a red team consultancy to help build out this capability inside of a methodology. Some of the other ones are purely defensive plays. They're just going to sell the data to an organization, so you can't even really work with them, right? Flare, on the other hand, went the complete opposite way. They were like, yeah, let's work with all the red team companies. I mean, several of my best friends own consultancies, and work for consultancies who are red teams, and they're working with Flare right now to make sure that they get this coverage for their clients. I think in the future, they've split, the product. When you log into it, not only do you get an awesome browser for credentials that are exposed places, they're working into automation to check to see if these things are valid. They're looking to create a lot of really cool AI stuff right now to tell you what attacker groups are talking about on these forums and telegrams and Discord chats. And normally those features in CTI, they're so wishy-washy, right? Like, like you'll have some vendors who say, oh, we do, some analysis and we can kind of tell you what these attackers are talking about. Flares is the real deal. And so they'll really tell you, like, here's the chatter, here's where they're going to attack next, here's a campaign that's going on. And they have a team of really talented CTI experts, and bots as well, that are spidering and inside these chats and collecting information. And so, I think that one goal of Flares is to continue to make the data better than their competitors, I think. And then the other goal is to make it more consumable for the red team, and the organization that buys them as part of like a CTI kind of play. And so, it's kind of like one of those things where, like, do you want to go off and do something, make some new features that are kind of half baked, or you just want to be the best in class at what you do, right? And I think that that's kind of what Flare continues to do, is just be the best in class at what they do for the data and the collection, and the identifiers. And there's some new stuff coming out in the next year. I think that it's going to be pretty cool, but I can't talk about it yet. So we'll get into it maybe in a repeat or something like that.
Okay, maybe we can tease this out a little bit then without directly talking about it. So,
Yeah.
how do you and Flair really see red teaming evolving, and with what you can, obviously, what is Flair working on to stay ahead of competitors?
Yeah. So I think that there always has this jump of kind of where the bad guys are, right? So, in the early days of the dark web, right, it was, transition from public web forums like Shadow Crew, Carter's Market. This is a long time ago, to dark web, which is, obviously over Tor. And then you have invite-only communities, which were forums, and they moved off of forums into chat channels, which primarily was Telegram because it's non-extradition, a non-extradition chat platform that has encryption capability. Now you see some groups fragmenting off from Telegram into WhatsApp, into Discord, and making automated markets for selling illicit goods like credentials, and other things that are bad. They make automated bots to run the sales through all those things and provide previews automatically of the credentials data that's been stolen. And so really the market continues to iterate to where they feel like they're the safest. And so I think that, one of the things that Flare has done a really good job with is really understand where those shifts happen and how to infiltrate those groups. I imagine there's a lot of sock puppets involved, but I'm not on the research team specifically. And so that's kind of their bread and butter, is to keep the collection really, really current. I think that in red teaming in general, there's a lot of kind of like former pen testy type shops that are transitioning into red teaming these days, where they had a limited scope, but now they realize that because of the breaches that happen nowadays, um, you have to widen your scope a little bit to get, to make sure the coverage of the assessment matches kind of what attackers are really doing in the real world. And so, I think trying to, trying to follow that is really good. We have a few really good pen test methodologies that are out there. Obviously, SANS, built like kind of one of the most public ones about like, the methodology. I think Barrett, who's on the Red Team Village board, helped build that class out for SANS, and newer methodologies are coming out for red teaming all the time. But, one of my things is that modern red teaming is a mix of like a whole bunch of different skill sets, right? You have, sometimes you have physical, you've got social engineering, you have to have a web skill set, an infrastructure skill set, sometimes a cloud skill set. And so, a modern red team these days is multidisciplined. And then this is actually kind of a new skill set as well, which integrates someone who knows at least a little bit about threat intel and credential operations into a red team as well. And so I think that every year that I redux the methodology for my consultancy, it just includes more and more specialties. I mean, just the other day, I had a red team assessment where we managed to get initial access through a mobile app, which of all things, leaked a credential, got us in, and then we pivoted from there. And so really, you got to have a lot of skills. I think that red team will keep evolving to add all of these hacking skills, and it's not easy, right? I think that most of the red teamers I know, they're you have to be a malware author now too. You have to code a lot. You have to keep up with your C2 framework and make sure that it's not hit by EDR signatures, and make sure you can bypass all that kind of stuff. You got to know a really great assumed breach methodology or internal methodology as well. So I think red teaming is one of the most in-demand careers right now that people are trying to either go for, or the people that are in it are trying to stay in, because it's fun. It's got a big learning curve, and there's a lot of cool stuff to be done in it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that pain is definitely
yeah,
constantly evolving, always,
yeah. Don't you
always
feel like
new.
you're just like you're always learning? You're always having to learn a new thing, right?
Yep. And just when
Yeah,
you think you have it, something else comes
yeah,
along. So
exactly.
yeah, that's a great kind of segue into the next question. Like, as an experienced red teamer, as someone who's been a CISO and a field CISO, et cetera, like, what is your advice to all the red teamers out there for not only just how to keep up with all the trends, but also if they're interested in potentially integrating Flare into their workflow, how should they go about doing that?
So the reason I was able to make the determination that Flare was the product for me before I even worked for them was because Flare's the only one that does a free trial. So you can go to Flare and sign up for the free trial and tell them, "Hey, I'm a consultancy red teamer. I work for this consultancy. We want to evaluate, kind of the credential exposure and the CTI capabilities of the platform." And they will give you a free trial and let you kind of muck around in the data and see if it works for you. So that is a way you can get right into it. And then you can just start sorting when you get inside of the platform. The ones that are really my bread and butter, like the last, I would say, if I'm updating my statistics, probably 5 out of 8 of my last red team assessments, initial access was gained from credentials from Flare, but specifically from Stealer log credentials, which seem to be the most fresh, the most active. And so you want to go to the credential tab in Flare and just sort by Stealer logs that are recent for your company's domain, and then you can start testing them on their Okta portal, on their website logins, any place that you can log in. You can try those usernames and passwords and the cookies that come in those downloads as well. So that's how you would get started, just to kind of feel out the data. And then one thing that I do in my red team assessments is I actually give them a full breakdown. So I talk about where the credentials were leaked, via what telegrams, and I talk about how to roll credentials too, right? I think like a lot of red teams think very offensive, and when they do the reporting for a leaked credential or something like this, if they have this capability, they don't talk about the different levels, right? Because if someone has a Stealer log on the dark web or on Telegram or something like that, that means that they have actual malware installed on their machine, probably their personal machine, right? Their kid installed a Minecraft, tried to hack, or a Fortnite, pack or something like that, and really it was Redline or something like that, and so that means that the machine itself at the root level is compromised. And so that doesn't only mean that you have to roll the credential, which a lot of companies are used to doing. It means that you actually have to reformat the machine in some cases, to make sure that you have done coverage. So I have a full guide on defensive tactics and IR processes, for each different type of credential that's leaked. If it's just a website breach, then obviously you roll everything. If it's a site of yours that's in breach, you roll everything. Plus you reset server-side cookies to make sure that nothing was exposed. And then if it's a piece of malware that's infected someone's device, you actually have to reformat stuff. So I think that getting into the defensive stuff for the customers is really valuable too, even if it's a red team assessment.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think there's also a couple of opportunities during Defcon that people might be able to check out Flare. They're going to have a demo set up, I think, at our party, which is going to be pretty awesome. We're excited about that. And then also, I think they're planning on a CTF. Did you want to talk about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so in order to get your hands dirty, and if you want to compete too for some pretty sweet prizes, we're going to have a Flare CTF. So the link should be up on the screen here to register for it, but we're going to have it during the weekend of DEF CON, couple days before DEF CON. And this will give you access to the platform, and we will ask you to find specific data for specific identifiers that we've set up, and sift through these, and get an idea of what it's like to be a CTI analyst or a red team analyst sifting through this data to try to find it for your customer. And so we've got some pretty sick prizes for that competition. You'll be right in the platform, so you'll get to use it just like I use it every day as part of a red team assessment, or when I'm showing it to people. You'll get to see the reports functionality and everything like that. So so that is going on right before DEF CON. And Flare is also the sponsor for Red Team Village, one of the bigger sponsors, and so that means we'll see everybody at the party, which is banging. I think it's on Friday night, so we're excited about that. We'll be there. So it's going to be a really, really fun hacker summer camp. We're kind of going to be everywhere, and I won't spoil everything, but so Flare's mascot, if you've been on Flare's, if you've ever been to a Flare table at a conference, or you've ever been to a Flare event, our like unofficial mascot is actually, it's kind of like Rocket the Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy. It's big raccoon face. We might have some badge of life stuff going on this year, where we have a badge, a very limited run of badges. So if you see a Flare person, maybe stop to them, chat them up, see if you can convince them to give you one of our raccoon badges, which are going to be absolutely dope.
Yeah, a chance to test out those social engineering skills while you're at
Yeah,
it.
yeah, for sure.
Awesome. I also heard some rumors about challenge coins and maybe
Oh,
some dinners with some folks that may or may not be part of this interview. So pretty
yep.
exciting stuff.
Yeah, so one of the prizes for the CTF is to come to the creators dinner. So what's cool about Flare is they've worked with a lot of like the big creators, John Hammond, myself, Naham Sek, a lot of people who are doing YouTube content on penetration testing, bug bounty, and CTI type work. And I think one of the prizes is actually we're doing a dinner, and so they were like, well, what if one of the prizes was, hey, come and have dinner with us, chill, have a couple drinks. So that's one of the additional kind of add-on prizes. Challenge coins, I'm not really supposed to say anything about that. I have no comments. We're going all out this year. You'll see us at B-Sides. You'll see us at DEF CON. I will be around kind of guerrilla marketing and at Black Hat 2 in the earlier part of the week, so we'll be everywhere.
Yeah, that's great. Really exciting stuff. Okay, so wrapping up here then, Jason, do you have any kind of final words or additional info you want to share with the community?
No, I just want to say thank you again. I think I've been part of the Red Team Village last couple years as a sponsor, and boy, do they treat you right. As far as you know, like how awesome the team is. And now I'm on, you know, I'm with you guys as part of the organizing committee too, which is it's really great to see such a well organized crew running the village, especially with all the changes this year that are happening to the venue. I did a virtual walkthrough of the venue and the space that Defcon is going to be in this year. So I'm really excited to see the new format. It's you know, it's stacked on top of each other like a sandwich, but it's more space. So I'm really looking forward to Hacker Summer Camp and Defcon this year. You know, if you see someone with a Flare T-shirt in the hallway, stop us. You know, we've got swag. We want to talk about everything red teaming and credential exposure. We're happy to sit down and chat. So,
Yeah, I'll be looking out for people for sure. But you know, thanks for the Red Team Village plug. Obviously, you're part of the team, but you know, a lot of work goes on behind the scenes, but none of that work could happen without you know, all the generous support from our sponsors. So, again, on behalf of the Red Team Village, I just want to say thank you to Flare for being our exclusive. So, not one of the biggest, but the biggest sponsor that we have for Defcon 32. So, you know, thank you so much from the entire team to Flare. And with that, Jason, thanks for your time today. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm really excited to check out Flare at Defcon.
awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, take care.